Sistahship.
Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You walk with me and I won't put you. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You walk with me and I won't put you. Suspense, sis, we know we on a mission, not a game. Hope each other get over some things. We was trying to bring change, cause we've been through the rain. Now it's time to shine like the flame. Let's talk about life skills. We building up our quality to right. We rolling out of poverty, love, heals. So we become the prodigy of how a sistahship could be a really high quality stand. Together we united, hold hands, support each other's dreams and our plans, doing everything we can. Just to show we understand the power of a friendship. Together we learn. Yeah, let's talk. We don't want to see you hurt. And be here for each other, no matter the color that work is. That's for sure and for certain.
We are Sistahship. Sistahship.
We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I roll with you. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I roll with you. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. We on a sistahship. We on a sistahship. Hello, happy Sunday, everybody. Happy blessed Sunday, everyone. How are we doing today?
We're doing.
It is a beautiful Sunday. I just want to say, just quickly, yesterday, Tiffany Cole-Bling and myself did a amazing vendor event in East Stroudsburg. It went really well. The vendors there, some were first timers, supporting local businesses. I mean, it's so important to do that. So if you're ever in an environment where you have local vendors out there and there's vending events going on, please support local vendors. We are in trying times and these people are trying to, survive in this type of economy. So with that said, I want to personally thank Tiffany Cole-Bling, the Sistahship. We share the vendors that showed up yesterday. Thank you so much for that. With that said, I just want to do a quick round around the room we have an amazing panel here. This is the Sistahship, but we do have the brothership in the room as well. So we want to make sure we acknowledge everybody. So with that said, I'm going to go to my left here. Lauren Peterson, please tell the audience who you are and who you represent.
Sure. My name is Lauren Peterson. I'm the Executive Director at Women's Resources of Monroe County, the local domestic and sexual violence services center for Monroe County. Celebrating 41 years this year.
Awesome. 41 years.
41 years in operation, yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today because we'll talk about exactly what the subject is going to be for today. Going over to our girl, Lady Wisdom. How you doing today, Lady Wisdom?
I'm good. I'm not going to complain a whole lot. I'm not going to complain. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. We've got to my right, your left. We've got Maria Hernandez.
Yep.
You are
I am the owner of Blakesy Home Improvement, and I'm also an advocate for the discussion today.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in business for 43 years this year.
Well, look at that.
Yeah,
got a lot of
absolutely.
Awesome.
Don't look the age.
You don't look the age, so honey, don't even worry about that. Going over, Chris McCabe.
Christopher McCabe. I'm a 34-year resident here in Monroe County, single father. Very interested in where the discussion is going to go today.
Mm-hmm.
Have some personal experiences that can probably be shared as the day unfolds.
Awesome. blessed to have everybody on the panel today because we all have been impacted one way or another on this topic today, which is domestic violence. It is everyone's problem. Before we get started and get into the topic itself, I want to just also say that we want to honor and respect today, not just today, but the month of October happens to be Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So you can see some of us have our, her fight is everyone's fight. It's my fight. It's your fight. It's everyone's fight, right? So we are also honoring those that are dealing with breast cancer, and obviously anyone who's dealing with cancer. We have some, personal experiences with family members, friends, things of that nature. It's a huge issue across, the gamut. So we want to honor and respect those who are in the fight. We're in the fight with you. So with that said, but so let's talk about domestic violence. Quickly, when we look at domestic violence and we think about statistically the impact, 1 in 4 women, 1 in 9 men.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's reported cases, right?
Yes.
That's reported cases. So it's a huge issue. I mean, just think about it. If you're looking at everyone in the room here, just think about it. 1 in 4 women. It could be one of us.
Absolutely.
That's impacted. So our life experiences, pretty much show that this is a big issue. With that said, I think the biggest thing for us to really understand is what is domestic violence, because I feel sometimes people don't really understand what domestic violence is. Everybody just thinks it's like somebody hitting me,
Mm-hmm.
or you're in a relationship, marriage relationship, intimate partner situation, and if they strike me, that's the only thing that constitutes domestic violence.
Right.
So, Lauren, I'd love for you to kind of give us some greater detail in what domestic violence really truly is. And, I want to educate the audience because there is some, conflicts out there, it's just a subject that's, very serious. And, again, people don't understand truly what it entails.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month shares it also with Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And it is a very, at times, subversive thing that happens. And you have those wonderful statistics, 1 in 3 and 1 in 9. But it's so much more than what people think it is. You think about like Law and Order and all these big TV shows, and they put up a picture of a woman who's got a black eye or something like that. But it's so much deeper than that. And domestic violence can be just about any way that you can control another human being in an intimate partner relationship, whether that's physically, whether that's financially, emotionally, spiritually, financially, sexually, all these different ways. And it goes into always power and control.
Mm.
All of these different things that I just said, whether it's violence physically, violence verbally, violence emotionally, all of those are the transactions that another person uses to gain and or keep control and power over another person.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the motivator. People would say like, oh, well, they should just go to anger management. Well, they're in perfect control. They're not angry at other parts of their lives. It's just within this relationship that they have violence and violent tendencies and abusive tendencies. So it's not about anger. It's not about alcohol. It's not about drugs. Those can happen within domestic violence relationships, absolutely, just with any other kind of relationships. But the whole motivator is about control and power over another person.
Mm.
And these ways that person will have control and gain the control.
And control, and I think a lot of people don't realize that when they're in a controlling environment, sometimes they release control, right? And they're saying, oh, well, that's just my husband, or that's just my wife, and that's just how she is.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't realize that in those situations, you really need to look at that individual and understand truly where that's coming from.
Right. You really do. And it's so hard sometimes to see it because people who abuse, and that there's no one size fits all for abusers or for victims. There's not, you can say, okay, you're a victim or you're an abuser. You can be anybody. It can be anybody who is walking down the street. But people who do abuse, chronically abuse, are very good at what they do. They are very good manipulators for both the relationship that they're in, but also the people that surround that relationship, the family members, the community members. That's why you always say, oh, I can't believe that this person would do that. They're just so nice. So, and that's a tactic because they want to isolate their victim. They want to isolate the person away from their families and their support system so that they would keep that power and control over that person. Also physically isolating them, moving them away from their support systems, their family. We get a lot of people coming into the Poconos. It's a transient area coming from New York and New Jersey. And a lot of times we'll get calls on our hotline saying, well, my family is in New York, or my family is in Jersey, or sometimes my family is in LA, but they've been moved here and they have no support. And that's a tactic that abusers will use to keep their victim isolated, which allows them control.
That's very interesting. I didn't even think of it that. You know, I was doing some research and when I started reading patterns and behaviors, I was actually surprised because I wasn't even aware myself of the specific patterns of a domestic, a person in a domestic violence situation.
And it's also cyclical. Like there's three phases. Yeah, absolutely. And it cycles through it, but it also cycles up, like it'll go like this way and then it'll go up again. It goes up in intensity. So you got the honeymoon phase where things are good, people are happy, things are fine, but then you got the tension phase where you kind of, something's not right. You're walking on eggshells, you're kind of getting like vickery at each other. And then you have the explosion phase where the violent incident happens, whether it's a physical an altercation, whether it's verbal, whether it's whatever the altercation is, but then it cycles back into the honeymoon phase. I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again, I'll go get help, I'll get counseling, but it's going to happen again. It's cyclical in nature and it continues to happen and continues to grow in intensity and violence. Whether it starts out as just verbal, then maybe it's a shove, then maybe it's weapons.
Aggressively, yeah. For the panel here, because I think, it's good to kind of bring our experiences into the fold as well, those who either personally or through family, friends, things like that. Because I think we may all know someone who's been through it or have been in a situation, maybe even a child growing up in that situation.
Yes.
Maria, help us understand kind of from your experience. And by the way, she's a Jersey girl, Newark, New Jersey, Brick City.
Absolutely.
Tell us, kind of give us your experience and your thoughts on domestic violence.
Absolutely. My experience is that I personally grew up with a very violent father, and I also grew up with a stepfather who was an alcoholic. I never experienced him putting his hands on my mother, but the emotional, because there is also emotional that is involved. And I was self-taught, because no matter where, obviously during that time in the 80s, no matter where you went, they never had any resources for the children. Where did the children turn to? How do we help break that cycle? How do we get away from that? How did I learn not to be abusive? And quite frankly, I found myself being emotionally abusive towards my husband because I didn't know any other way.
Right.
I only knew how to control a situation, and I actually sought out therapy. I went on my own to do it. I was never taught, and that I think is lacking right now with this situation is, what about the kids?
Yeah.
When the mother or the father are abused and they have to go to a woman resources program or to a shelter, what happens to the children? Because it affected me, in such a profound way that I now help women in the situations that I grew up with, because I see the signs. I know when a woman is sitting quietly and her husband is being aggressive with his speech patterns, what that means to her and how she shuts down. And I have myself taken these females aside and asked them, what is going on? Are you okay? And a lot of people are afraid to do that. I'm not, because I grew up with it. I grew up watching what it can do and how it can destroy a family.
Yes.
And it's sad because, like I said, with a female and or a male, because let me tell you something, there are a lot of men out here that
Absolutely.
are abused,
Yeah.
but are afraid because, for instance, when they call a program, Women Resources, they kind of shy and step away from it because they're like, well, wait a minute, this is for females only.
Mhm.
And me, this is just my personal opinion. I think the name needs to change. It needs to be more specific that it is for anyone
Yes.
that is hurting, anyone that is fearful, anyone that is afraid to do something to change their situation. Whether it be they leave, whether they get help, there has to be a change. And this is the time for the change, because I'm going to tell you something right now. My cousin was murdered last month by her husband, and no one saw this. No one saw it. You know why? Because he was a good manipulator. He manipulated the whole situation where everyone was shocked. But what's so ironic is that I saw it because
you
I
experienced
experienced it, and because
Yeah.
you want to know something, I'm an abuser myself, but I went to therapy. I taught myself I don't want to be like this. So I tend to seek that out. I tend to see it. And when I try to bring it to the table, everyone runs for, oh my God, no, how could you say that? That is a problem with our society today.
Yeah.
No one
Yeah.
wants to believe that their son, their brother, their sister, their cousin is capable of doing something so horrific that we all shut our eyes to it.
Right.
Well, I
Well,
think there's,
If
go
I
ahead,
could just
yeah,
piggyback off what you said the way that you were an abuser, that you verbally abused your husband.
Mhm.
Men have a different kind of, it's almost a form of emasculation.
Mhm.
So men are not going to seek the same kind of help a woman would seek, because they don't want to be looked at as less than a man, because they allowed a woman to do certain things to them. Whether it's her tongue is just like it's like taking a whip and just cracking it up against their back. I lived in dysfunction. I'm going to put it that way, because I was covered by a multitude of the domestic violence. And let me be clear, it's not domestic violence doesn't just go through man-woman relationships
Right.
or same-sex relationships.
Mhm.
Children, grandparents
Absolutely.
could be in a violent relationship
Absolutely.
with someone,
Mhm.
because it's about control. So you might not have been able to say something to your parent when you was a kid, but what you saw, it reflects. Last week we did a topic called Arrested Development. People's development and maturity is arrested when they experience these things.
Absolutely.
You say, why aren't people seeking help, or why don't children have help? Adults didn't always have help either.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when you're an adult and you're in a situation like this, you can't help them because you don't know how to help you.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how old you are,
Mhm.
you experience it over and over again.
Absolutely.
When someone brings it up, it could be a trigger. Parents that are in relationships with their spouse or someone else that are fighting, cussing, or whatever the abuse is, your kids are affected.
Absolutely.
If for no
Yes.
other reason, get out for them,
Mhm.
because someone is going to get hurt or killed.
Mhm.
So then you lose two parents,
Mhm.
you lose a life. We have the walking wounded. So you have so many adults that are broken from what they experienced
Mhm.
in the
Absolutely.
domestic violence. They
Yes.
saw their mom, they
Yep.
saw their dad,
Mhm.
they saw things that they shouldn't have seen, they saw the sexual abuse, the verbal
Absolutely.
abuse, the emotional abuse, and even with the mental abuse. People try to figure out how are you saying you're affected mentally? Your mental abuse, abusers, an abusee can become an abuser
Absolutely.
because they don't know different. That's their normal.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's unfortunate that we try to make it seem, and I say we as a society, that it is only females experiencing it.
Mhm.
Absolutely not. your parents are experiencing it. You got the, they call it the elder abuse.
Absolutely.
They call it child abuse.
Yes.
Mhm.
Mhm.
When someone is being sexually abused, no matter what your age is, it's a form of abuse.
That's right.
They have programs. We may not necessarily know of the men programs or even the children programs. The goal is to break the cycle.
Right?
Absolutely.
Educate.
The goal is to educate. So we want to edify people
Mhm.
that there's others that experience some things.
Mhm.
You know, everybody wants to be everything to everybody, and you can't.
Got it.
Why don't you just leave?
You can't just
It's
leave.
easy.
It's not
easy to
easy.
just leave.
I'm
Lauren,
really,
I
really
would
glad
live.
that someone said that.
Please,
I'm so glad
Lauren.
that someone said that.
Can I,
It's
can I
easy to
mention
say that,
something?
Liz.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not even a matter of you can't leave. It's you're so gaslit at times.
Mhm.
You're so
Mm.
overwhelmed, and by the time that the abuse has begun, you are so enmeshed in the relationship, in that mindset, you don't know that it's time to leave.
Yep.
You don't understand or recognize that there's a door.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know, I know for a fact that it was mentioned by someone that there's no way that the police would ever believe that this 90-pound woman is hitting me.
Mhm.
And
That's true.
you know, it's that's sent home, and men and even in the same sex relationship, that's what's being held on to. They don't understand that there's help out there. They don't understand that there's an outlet, and they also don't understand that even at times that there's something going on.
Right. No, that's absolutely so key that in this conversation. A couple points to talk about before I get to the why you don't just leave. To your point, our name, Women's Resources. Yes, it's gendered, but Women's Resources is for everyone, and that is something we are looking at this coming year. Is a probable name change because we realize that it's a very I'll put it out there. It's a very innocuous term. Someone who is a male, someone who identifies masculine, someone who is let's say a 14, 15, 16-year-old boy, are they going to call Women's Resources Hotline?
No, because it says like
No, absolutely. But I'm just putting it out there until that happens. Women's Resources is for everyone. Whether you're a victim now, whether you were a victim 50 years ago, whether you're a family member of a victim, we are here for you. For the children, we have counselors just for children. So when either they're staying in the shelter or whether they're coming in as a community client, we have 2 counselors who just see children that are trained for that role. They're trained in the ACEs study. Are you familiar with the ACEs study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences? 2017, a study, I can't remember who it was through, took a look at thousands of these children over a period of their lifetime and identified, I think, about 12 different traumatic events that actually affect, we all know trauma affects us mentally and emotionally, but it actually affects you physiologically. They're more likely to experience obesity, they're more likely to experience strokes, they're more likely to experience heart attacks, they're more likely to diabetes. Absolutely. So there's actual physiological reactions to trauma. So working with these kids young, working with these kids to break that cycle is absolutely key. So when they become adults, we're not continuing that, and that we're also addressing what they're already experiencing, helping them to understand the cycle, understand what is going on is not their fault, and understand healthy expressions of emotions. And to your point, sir, is working with kids maybe outside of the counseling environment. Our educators will go into schools and work on healthy expressions of masculinity because boys are indoctrinated so young on what it's like to be a man. And it's the sense of you have to be strong all the time. You boys don't cry. We hear that all the time. And tears are so normal. Tears are so healthy. We need to encourage people to have those healthy expressions, those safe expressions of emotion, whether you're a boy or girl or gender neutral, gender nonconforming, whoever you are. It's really, really key to have that. To the point of why don't they just leave? It's never that simple. It's an average of 7 times that a person will leave a domestic violence situation before they leave for good. And that's just average.
Wow.
7 times. And even further, if there's children involved, you have to take that into consideration with their schools and with their activities and things like that. We have oftentimes our shelter numbers will go up in the summer because people will wait until they're out of school to leave.
so that
With
they're not
kids.
impacting their
Right.
kids for school.
Yes.
Oh,
What people
wow.
don't know is that Monroe County, at the very least, I'm not sure about other counties, is we have an agreement with the school districts, with the public school districts, that whether you're in Pocono Mountain or East Stroudsburg, you will get to your school. You will not have to worry about schools while you're in shelter.
Wow.
Okay.
That's
Our
good to
shelter
know.
is in a safe, undisclosed location in the county. We have almost 24-hour coverage there. It is a communal living shelter, but it's safe. And sometimes when these kids come in, it's the first time they've experienced safety in their lives. And we try to make it as normal as possible. We'll celebrate birthdays and holidays and things like that, and we try to make it as comfortable as possible. But yeah, it's a communal living shelter. It's a short-term situation where we can get them at least safe for now to then figure out what our next steps are going to be. But why doesn't she just leave? Is maybe she never had they have never had a job. That's another tactic
Yeah.
that they'll use is financial abuse.
Yeah.
They don't have access to a bank account. Some people don't even know how to have a bank account or what credit means, or their abuser has taken their information and racked up so much credit that their credit is full and they could never apply for a credit card anymore. Financial abuse. There's so much more to it than why don't they just leave? That is oftentimes the first step, even if it's just for a night, even just for 3 nights, just to get your head out of it, to be safe for a second, talk to one of our counselors and see what your next steps are going to be. But I think the key of it is to get out the message that you do not have to go through this alone. Women's Resources is here 24 hours a day. You can call us at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. on a Sunday, Christmas Eve, New Year's, it doesn't matter. You can call our hotline and you will get a trained crisis counselor to speak to you at that time and assess your needs and give you the options that we can provide for you, as well as outside information if you need that. We are here for you 100% of the time. You do not have to go through this alone.
Also, I just want to piggyback off of that only for a second, because she said, what about the kids?
Yeah.
You can't just take somebody's child, sit them down and counsel them. So you still have to get permission from the parent that brought them into your environment
That's where I was gonna go.
to give them counseling. And because some people, they still have that, they still lost in that domestic, in that moment in time where they are, they can't give what they don't have. That's number one. Number two, they actually are still in a set of, I don't want people in my business,
Yes.
or afraid because they haven't totally, until they are totally out of that, they're gonna kind of like, I can't get you help because I don't know what's going on with me. But I don't, if you go in there, you might tell them more than I'm willing to tell them. They don't want that. Somebody that's been abused is not looking for information to be shared because they haven't totally decided if they are finished.
Yes.
If they got to go back into that and that child brought up
situation, yep.
something, as a mandated reporter, you are to tell.
Yes, absolutely.
You are to tell, because it's not you protecting the abuser or the victim of that abuse. It's that child.
child.
Yes.
Right.
It's
Yes.
I'm a mandated reporter. I have to report it.
Mhm.
So if I know that you're being physically, verbally abused, I'm supposed to report that. But can I pull that kid and make him go into therapy? No. I can't make the victim go into therapy either. Sometimes you can't change what you don't acknowledge. And you can't change that until you're ready to change. It's like in a substance abuser or alcohol abuser. Until you are sick and tired of being sick and tired,
You're not gonna make any
you're
change.
not going to make any changes. You could run away. That's probably why the average leave time is 7 before they actually make the final run.
Children, right? Yeah.
Is because they haven't gotten to that place. And they could have been so abused or conditioned to be in that.
That's normal.
They saw it
Yeah.
in their life growing up,
Mhm.
and then they started getting into relationships.
Absolutely.
Predators prey on their victims. And when I say prey, they find the weakest link inside you,
Yes.
and they keep going for that.
Absolutely.
And I tell, listen, this, I could be wrong, but I tell it to women, I tell it to men, learn not to tell all of you. Don't give somebody all of you. Because they find something in that conversation or that topic,
To trigger you.
and they just find it, they prey on it, and get you to give. And more that you give of you, the more and more they find
Yeah.
find that way to control you.
And you end up losing yourself too.
Absolutely.
I just want to say one thing as far as counseling with children, because I was a victim of child abuse, domestic abuse, all the above. And I was always too afraid to tell the truth because I loved my mother.
Yeah.
And I didn't want anyone to know the dirty little secret
Yeah.
that was going on behind
Nobody
doors.
stays home.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, I'm really proud of myself that I sought therapy because I'm in a very good place in my life.
Mhm.
But it took a while for me to really understand what was happening to me and to really physically and mentally accept that, oh my God, this has impacted me in such a way that I am bringing it into my marriage
Mhm.
or I'm bringing it into my friendships.
Mhm.
And that was self-taught for me, you know. So when a counselor sits with a child, I just wonder, because obviously I don't know, I'm sure things have changed drastically since I was younger. How do they go about bringing that monster to the table?
Mhm.
Because a kid is always going to protect that parent.
That parent.
Right.
They're just going to do it. It's
Mhm.
natural. No matter how ugly their living situation is, they don't, for me, believe it or not, it was normal.
Mhm.
It was normal for the things that were occurring. It was normal for my dad to be passed out on the floor and we would use him as a pillow.
Mhm.
That was normal.
Yeah.
So when questioned, we never brought it up
Right.
because you're taught to keep.
Oh, kids have this amazing capacity for love.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Unconditional.
No, unconditionally.
Mhm. Yes.
It's just ingrained into them, and terrible things can happen to them, and they have that capacity to still love their abuser.
Yes.
Yes.
And for us, whether it's a child or an adult, we work from an empowerment philosophy because, as we've said before, domestic abuse comes from a control and power situation. Empowerment philosophy is we are giving in little baby steps sometimes power back to that person.
Mhm.
They get to choose what they want to do. They get to choose what they want to work on today. If they want to just sit in the chair and color pages, all right, we're going to sit in the chair and we're going to color pages today. That's fine, because what we are showing them, instead of just
Empower.
dragging it,
Mhm.
is saying, I respect your choices.
Right.
Okay.
You get to decide how this rolls.
Yeah.
If you are hashtag done and you do not want to talk today, we get those with our teenagers. They're like, nah, I'm
Yeah,
done.
not
They're
today.
like, all right, let's play Pokemon. Like
Mhm.
we don't force the counseling relationship on somebody, because that is going against what our philosophy is, because power and control is about domestic abuse, whether you're an adult or a child, even more so when you're a child, because you even have less power
Mhm.
of the imbalance in that relationship. So we allow the survivors to guide themselves as along with us. We are along for the ride and helping them to make those next steps. And sometimes it's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it's that one step that matters.
Right.
So we have that empowerment philosophy to help them understand that your choices are to be respected. We will respect you and support you no matter what.
Mhm.
Whether we even professionally agree with someone. Let's say we know that for professionally, it's in a rape victim's best interest to at least make a report.
Right.
Mhm.
We know that.
Yes.
They're like, no, I don't want to.
You have to
Okay.
respect that.
Gotta respect the decision.
You have to.
Let me just quickly throw the number out there because this is a great topic, and we know we have viewers out there, listeners out there that obviously have been impacted, may have their own insights, or may want to ask a question or, understand more about it. 888-304-4401. Please call in if you have any questions or comments. 888-304-4401. Children. So I love the fact that we actually got into that, because I, as a child, I did see abuse in the family. And myself, I have 4 girls in the family myself. I'm the oldest of 4. Always trying, being the oldest, you're like the mother hen, right? You're always trying to take care of your sisters or your brothers or what have you. And it's interesting because I noticed that throughout our lives, I saw the differences on how we grew up and what we accepted and what we didn't accept in our own relationships. We have those who have fell victim to domestic violence. those who fought against it or said, I will never accept it and that will never cross my path, and, you know, have healthy relationships. And it's interesting how, depending on the individual, how different they grow up in the same environment. But from a mentality standpoint, you'll have those that are, you know, pretty much have accepted what that love, that type, what they think that love is. And then those that have said, no, I'm not going to accept that. And that's never going to happen in my life. And I think it goes back to what you were saying, is like, you also had to understand what you saw and what you were, you know, how it impacted you, and how you also had to recognize for yourself that you were
Absolutely.
becoming the abuser as well, you know.
Absolutely.
And I didn't even thinking of it from that perspective, because, you know, in those situations, you do, you know, if you don't receive help, or you don't accept help, or you don't acknowledge there's an issue, you know, you don't realize what you need to do to fix it, right? So
Absolutely.
so it's interesting that, you know, again, because there's those again who don't abuse because they saw it, they felt what it was like, and they saw how hurt the mother or the father was, because again, there was verbal as well as physical. You know, but again, I think there's also this cultural thing. And I want to get into that because I find it interesting. You know, I think about, like, you know, I have an Italian background, European background, and it was acceptable for a man to have control and you know, and I hate the word abuse, but it is what it is. It's abuse.
Absolutely.
Well, if their wife didn't do what they wanted or whatever have you, it's just smack them around and they'll just do what you want. And it goes back to that control element.
Yes. It always come back to the control.
So, you know, it's interesting because even when we talked, you know, I feel that even culturally, in some cases, and maybe I'm seeing it only from that perspective because of our environment, is that culturally I saw that as an acceptable thing.
Absolutely.
And I think that's true for a number of different cultures. You say you're Italian, but we have
Latin culture.
the Latinx
Absolutely.
community. We're opening a group right now for survivors, specifically for the Latinx community. We have 2 bilingual counselors who are fantastic, who want to talk about those kinds of topics of how the culture can not allow, but can keep falling back.
It
makes it
is.
acceptable.
It makes it acceptable. Exactly.
That
Because you
machismo.
taught that growing up,
Mhm.
that it's acceptable.
Right.
And even in so people of color, I actually was researching this now. We talked about 1 in 4 women, 1 in 9 men. In people of color, in communities of people of color, 1 in 3 in women, 1 in 4 in men.
Yes.
I was just like taken aback, like with all this information. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, you don't realize how prevalent and how big
It is.
this issue is
It's a huge
across just the gambit. But then, you know, as you start dialing it back in and really getting into lower level, like understanding it from cultural environments and things of that nature. And I think the biggest thing that I when I was reading this is that in a lot of cases, and when it comes to people of color, they don't want to call the cops.
That's
Yes.
right, because you're taught not
Because
to.
you're taught not to, right? Don't
Yeah.
call the cops on your
Uh-huh.
dad or your, you know, the boyfriend or whatever have you. Now we got situations where, you know, we're talking about people, you know, getting killed by the cops. So it's like, now you're putting me in a situation where,
Exactly.
so now you're going to call the cops on me because that's going to put me in a situation where I'm going to get killed. So now the woman is like, oh, I can't call. Or the child is saying, I can't call on daddy or I can't call on mommy because this is going to be a problem. So it irritated me when I was reading this because it really is, that is another control element.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's like controlling the environment so that, you know, you're telling somebody, well, you're going to get me killed. So why would, you know, you're going to call and get me killed?
Or you hear they're going to shoot me in front of our kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, exactly.
And that's that manipulation.
Absolutely.
That's power and
Manipulation.
control. They are very abusers who are chronically abused. They are very good at what they do, and I think
Master manipulators.
you brought something up. Was gaslighting.
Yeah.
You said that, and I'm so glad that you brought that up because it is something you hear more often than not now, and maybe people don't know really what it is, but it's crazy making. It's making you feel like you're crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't say that. What would you
Yeah.
think I was saying? That I think you just drank too much last night, or
Mhm.
whatever. It's making you feel like you're crazy. So you're questioning your own sanity. And that is a tactic to control the other person. Like, you can't survive without me. Look, you can't even find your keys. They're right here, where that abuser maybe moved them and hid them on purpose to make
So
you
that
feel
to
like you're
make you
crazy.
feel like you're crazy.
Yes,
Absolutely.
gaslighting. Very, very common tactic to be used in that situation, and utilizing the fear of police, utilizing the fear of any kind of law enforcement, and even more so now, let's say you're undocumented.
That
Oh,
too,
gosh.
yes, absolutely.
I have another one, and not to cut you off on that, but mental illness. My sister, who, and I say this, and I love her very much, she's mentally disabled. She has an autistic child, and she was in a shelter situation. She was put into housing, but she's mentally ill, so she messed up. So now she's hotel hopping. How does how do you reach someone who was brought up with abuse, went into an emotionally abusive situation, didn't work, never worked, left her husband, still doesn't work, she doesn't even know how to look for a job. How do we as a society help the mentally ill? Because there are so many females out there that are mentally challenged that don't know or cannot comprehend what to do or who to turn to.
Right. And that goes back to, I think we said earlier, is this life skills. Even when mental illness or mental health aren't in the picture, life skills is very hard for people who are in a domestic violence situation, because, again, it's a tactic. Oh, I'll take care of this, or I'll take care of that. You don't need to worry about that. You're going to do it wrong, whatever. We have people who literally don't know how to make macaroni and cheese. So we teach them that in shelter. We actually have a program that we will have local financial institutions come in and teach basic banking 101 for free, for them to come in and help them to set up a bank account. But when it's mental health and mental illness, and it's such a more complicated situation, and I'm so sorry about your sister.
It's so bad.
But for here in Monroe County, we're a bit of a mental health desert here for resources, as well as a housing desert for housing resources. We have a program at Women's Resources where we have rapid rehousing funds to assist survivors with accessing safe, affordable housing. So we have these funds, we have the personnel to do it. We don't have the supply. There is a very, very limited rental market here in Monroe
Can't
County.
you use that to relocate now? I think
Yes,
it's
it's
verbiage has changed that you're allowed to.
yes, we're able to go in anywhere in the NEPA region now,
Right.
because it's a I forget, a coalition, a conglomerate of all the different counties and centers. So we do work pretty well, but even outside of it, with COVID, has created a very horrible
I was
housing
gonna say,
situation.
COVID.
So you'll find very little housing, but we're working on it. But the 2-on-1 coordinated entry system allows for the housing market to be a little bit broader for access. So if someone is looking for housing, all they do is they call 2-on-1 and they get onto the queue. We call it the queue. And then whether they're identified as a survivor, they go through an entire very long questionnaire with someone on the line, and they're identified either as a survivor or not a survivor. But if they're identified as a survivor looking for housing, we'll pull their name. Our staff will pull the name off the queue and work with them one-on-one on identifying what their needs are, what their supports are, what's their goals, and try to find them housing and help them. And we can pay up to a year of their rent for them, or beyond if necessary. But for mental health, and jobs is very difficult. Fitzmaurice Community Services, I know, is a great resource here in Monroe County that helps the MHDS community with housing, with caseworkers, with learning life skills, and helps them to access housing and then keep it, because their caseworkers are trained in that wheelhouse. That might be someone you went on a future show specifically about that.
absolutely.
Fitzmaurice would come out and talk about that.
I want to get that information.
Yeah,
from you,
absolutely.
because I
We have a-
definitely,
We had a question.
In the online.
I'll get you that.
We had an
Number.
online question about what happens if they're non-violent, a non-violent abuser, but they're controlling another person's life.
Right. Well, I think it
Also,
also.
you have those that, well, speaking of tempo, still have control.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yes,
So-
absolutely.
Absolutely.
And we were talking about this
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
People will call our hotline thinking, well, I'm not sure I'm really a victim because they don't hit me.
Right,
That shouldn't be the threshold that you have to meet.
right.
Wow.
But it does always come back to power and control. If there is in a relationship, whatever, whether it's an intimate partner relationship, parent-child, whichever way it goes, if there is an imbalance of power and a sense of control, that's domestic abuse. Whether you're using your fists or your hands or your voice,
Mhm.
or other tactics.
Mental manipulation,
Can,
financial
Laura,
manipulation.
can we give those that are listening? We have a silent audience. I'm always concerned about the
Mhm.
silent audience
Yes.
that are listening. Some signs that they may be entering or are in an abusive relationship.
Do you feel safe? That's really what it comes.
No, I'm
mentally-
not,
right.
I wasn't
No,
supposed to
no,
answer that.
no, that's my sign. That's my sign. Is do you feel
Well, they have-
physically, emotionally safe where you're at?
Well,
Well,
how
some
do you
can
remove
feel-
the stigma
Yeah.
that is, you know, where the person doesn't feel empowered, but at the same time they are in their house is safe, the bills are paid, there's food at the table.
Mhm.
You know,
That's that
Right.
nonviolent abuser.
but
Yes.
exactly, but you know, how do you open, let that the person who's being abused identify the fact that that is abuse because you know they're 400 miles from home.
Yep.
You know, any sort of support group, they are suddenly not allowed to, or even if it's not allowed to, they
Discouraged against.
discouraged
Mhm.
against you know meeting up with friends, going out in social situations,
Yeah.
Constantly questioning who you're seeing, who you're talking to.
Mhm.
Yes.
Exactly.
Where you're going, who you calling.
And then
Yep.
also, you know, how do you start to remove the stigma? You know, we talk about removing the stigma of mental illness, but there's a stigma of domestic abuse.
Yes.
And how do you start to remove that
Yes.
stigma in social situations and society at all?
I think we start to do that by having these exact kinds of conversations.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
We
getting it out there.
Sunlight, I heard this great metaphor this morning. I can't even remember where I heard it. Probably on a news program, but sunlight is the best disinfectant. Light. Bring it into the light. Talk about it.
Yes.
Because evil thrives in darkness.
Yeah.
Abusers don't want their stuff to get out.
Yeah.
So they do whatever
Dirty
they
little
can.
secret,
yeah.
Exactly. They do whatever they can. They say whatever they need to say. Threaten who they need to threaten to make sure that doesn't happen. We have to talk about it. We have to talk about it with our colleagues, with our friends, with our family, with our children, as young as you can, where they think they will understand it, because it all comes down to respect. If you do not respect another human being, you will not treat them.
Mhm.
And we teach the children, even as young as second graders, on respecting other people
Mhm.
and having them respect you and your own bodily autonomy, and asking for when you can give somebody a hug, and say if someone says no, you respect that.
Mhm.
You have to learn to respect. But removing the stigma is so key for those situations who, you said, the house is, they're physically safe, the house is paid
Mhm.
for, there's food on the table, things like that. But do you feel free to do what you would like to do when you want to do it?
Yes. You know, I do want to bring this up. Speaking of that, I watched this series on Netflix. It's called Made.
Made.
And
yes.
Everybody-
oh my gosh, and was
Yes.
so wild was when she was being interviewed and said, well, I'm not abused. And I think it was the way she said it that the
Mhm.
woman that was helping her turned around and said, well, can you tell me what you think abuse is?
Yes.
Right.
And
Yes.
she felt that it was being smacked
Right.
and hit, and it isn't.
Right.
Abuse is on
Right.
so many levels that a lot of people dismiss it because they will tell a female, well, what are you so worried about? You have a beautiful home.
Thank you.
You have a
Mhm.
beautiful car.
Stigma.
They pay for this, they pay for that. What is wrong with you? You're so unappreciative. And that is where a woman will then be on eggshells for the rest of her life with this partner, whether it be male or female, and not understand that, oh my God, you know what, I am abused.
Yes. It's talking to someone who is trained. If you know somebody who is
Somebody's car is going off.
I don't know, maybe had keys.
Pass it to Tiffany.
Oh,
I went
yes.
off.
It's off.
Oh,
It's
Just
off.
make sure it goes
Okay.
off though. because they pop back on.
Oh, that's your, oh, I.
Sorry, guys. Give us
Sorry.
1 second. We have
Sorry
a
about that.
What were we even talking about?
technical in the background.
We were
We
saying
are
about
live.
maid.
Yeah, no,
No.
that's actually a good point because
you.
I agree. I think this goes back to again understanding the signs
Yep.
of being in an abusive relationship. And I actually wanted to say this. So this is something that probably somebody will say, well, what about counseling? Yeah. So what? Like, all right, he's hitting me, or I can help him. Let's go to counseling. Like, you'll hear a lot of people say, now, me personally, like if you're having conflicts,
Healthy conflict is normal.
healthy conflict is, thank you.
Yes.
Can you please?
Healthy conflict is normal in a relationship.
Mhm.
It's when there is a power imbalance where there's two parties involved unconsensually, because there is some lifestyles that have that consensually.
Right.
Just put it out
It's
there.
true. Put it out there.
It's true.
It's true.
So when there is an unconsensual power imbalance where one person uses tactics to control another person, whether it is physically, verbally, emotionally, financially, sexually, all across the board, then it's domestic abuse. It shouldn't be the threshold of physical violence. If you do not feel that you have the freedom to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, with who you want to do it with, then there is a power imbalance. Then there is a control factor. And speaking with someone who is trained, and all of our counselor advocates go through a very rigorous 70-hour training before they're able to have contact with the victim, wherever, can help them identify that. If you know someone who maybe is in an abusive situation, maybe could just use some help, maybe just wants to talk to somebody about their situation, they can remain 100% anonymous and call our hotline. It's 570-421-4200. Here in Monroe County, from wherever, you can give us a call. You will always get a live trained person to talk to you.
Number again.
570-421-4200. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We don't take a break on holidays and weekends. There's always a person to talk to you. Talk to someone about it. Explain your situation. We are trained to know these signs. We are trained to see read between the lines, so to speak, and then we'll be able to offer those services. We have counseling, one-on-one and group counseling, legal advocates who can help you to get a PFA, a protection from abuse order. If you're looking to get a divorce, child support, whatever it is, file criminal charges. Our legal advocates can assist you. We're not attorneys, but we're advocates. We have, of course, our emergency shelter program. If you are fleeing domestic violence and you need a safe space, you don't have anywhere else to go, we can support you with that.
How do you even start? So we know there's been situations where a person, I'll just say woman or man, I'll just say a person, is in a situation where they can't, that person's there all the time, right? That's abusing them.
COVID.
Let's talk COVID,
Yes.
right? They're in the same house
How do you,
all day long.
you're told to stay home to stay
24/7.
safe. What do you do when home isn't safe?
Right.
We had that all through, I would say, when everything kind of shut down in March 2020. Gosh, that seems like yesterday, I think, a million years ago. And then until things started to open up again, where people were going back to work a little bit more, everywhere, including us, saw a drastic drop in hotline calls.
Because people were home.
People were home.
Yeah,
They
but
could
they're
not even get a
abusers.
safe point to call someone. You weren't going to work. You weren't going to school. You weren't taking kids to practices or to clubs or whatever. You were literally stuck at home with your abuser. They couldn't find a safe time to call. Once things happened, floodgates opened. We got more hotline calls last fiscal year than we've ever gotten in any of the years prior. We got over 2,100 calls last year.
Wow.
That was a lot.
That is heavy.
Yes.
And probably in those situations, there was some abuse, and I don't care what you say, abuse is abuse, right?
Yes.
Some abuse, but being now that they're home, it probably escalated.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because,
Absolutely.
just think about it. You're sitting at home with a person. If you don't have a good relationship to begin with, that just makes it so much more
It
worse.
exasperates.
Exasperates the situation. So I could see that happening, because if abuse was occurring already, just imagine being home all day.
It absolutely
And
has.
that target is there 24/7.
Exactly.
That
You
level
also-
And the
is really-
frustration.
You also have people that deal with domestic violence from a Christian standpoint, where they stay in it because something
yeah.
that their faith
Their faith.
has taught them.
Mhm.
But you can find Christian counselors. For those that are Christians, you can find Christian counselors that will help you. And sometimes that might be your safe haven to go into the building. In the church building, when you're in there and see someone that you may ask for help. Because for those that I'm going to step on their toes and they may have a comment about it, but there are some that are in the Christian community that sit on higher chairs or honor themselves more that are the abusers. And or they're counseling people for selfish reasons
Absolutely.
to suit their why they do what they do as well. But please, if you're in that situation, please go get you some counseling. Seek someone that you feel like you could truly trust.
Right.
Maybe that's the only place that you're allowed to go. You can get help. There's ways to get help. I say that I think one of the hardest things, again, like I said, people think that abuse only comes in a relationship. I lived through domestic violence in my mother's household. And I saw it. I experienced it. But I experienced it with siblings. And as you said, Steph, most people in the household experienced it a different way. You're either going to decide to break a cycle or you're going to live in a cycle. You said that, Maria said that her sister has mental health issues. I'm not going to call your sister mentally disabled. She has mental health issues because that's how she learned to deal with the abuse that was around her.
Absolutely.
We don't necessarily agree with everything, but we don't experience everything that everyone else is experiencing.
Right.
So in that, I say that I'm trying to keep it.
You could be real with me. I use mental health because I don't want to be politically incorrect in saying
Yeah.
Well, I'm not that. It's like I heard you say, I realized that I needed help. Like when I heard you say that, you got a lot of people that have experienced abuse and they don't know that they need
They
help.
need help, right?
Absolutely.
You said something
so-
earlier about, well, there's help out there, just get it.
I
But
did-
how do you, and I'm
I just meant for
paraphrasing.
just for those that are inside.
But the problem is how do you internally recognize that you need the help? And then, so what's the
It's
how?
hard.
What's the how? How do
It's
you get
hard.
that help?
I don't think we can answer that.
It's
Yeah,
not, it's
I honestly
an
don't think you
individual-
can. Yeah,
It's an
every
individual thing. So
It's not
I had
easy.
explained in a conversation that we had last week. I have been a mom since I was 10. Not that I birthed the child. I did not birth the
Mother
child,
figure.
but I have been a mother figure since I was 10.
I know what you
I
mean.
cooked, I cleaned, I even went up to the schools
Mhm.
as I probably was 14 when I had to go to the first school for one of my siblings. My development wasn't arrested, it was accelerated. So I saw the domestic violence, I saw my mom fight back. And in her fighting back, I literally stopped her from killing someone
Mhm.
in her fight back. So abusers don't know that victims get to a place where they snap. I've seen it happen.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I find that some of my other siblings that have experienced the abuse, same way I have, they all have arrested development. They handle it different.
Absolutely.
I used to go to Alateen.
So did I.
I went to Al-Anon. I even went to AA meetings.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Um,
Wow.
It's tough. It's tough.
Let me,
It's
I'm
very impactful to you know, I can understand where you're coming from, Lady Wisdom. This is a hard discussion. We got tissues on the table because you're gonna make everybody cry now.
no, but that's so real too, because we went to Alateen, Al-Anon, AA,
Mhm.
and
What is Alateen?
for
Alateen is
children
you have a
of
parent,
alcoholics.
Yeah.
so it helps you as a teenager try to
Yes.
cope with it.
Yes, and Al-Anon are for the spouses.
The spouses
Or
or
the
the
alcoholics.
family.
Or
Family-
other-
or
or other
other
family
family
members.
members.
Yes.
And I feel you, because for me, when I said that I knew I needed the help, I'm going to tell you right now, that was hard. I'm going to tell you, when I looked in the mirror and saw who I was becoming, I hated myself, because
Okay, that's it. I need
when
tissues.
when you realize for the first time that you are becoming that monster that you hated your whole life, you hated this person but loved them unconditionally, you are so torn. And it took so much. It took me years to go to therapy. It took me a long time. It wasn't just one moment where I woke up and said, oh my God, I know I have this problem. I literally fought it because I didn't want to believe.
But you were already an adult, may I ask?
Yes, I was already
And married.
and married.
Okay.
And I one time verbally, and because it's emotional, and my husband looked at me in such a way that I knew he was losing respect for me. And that opened wounds that I could not deal with. I was on my knees. I was in a fetal position because I couldn't deal with how it had impacted me. Here, I thought, I'm a business owner. I'm doing this. I'm good.
Yeah.
Nothing. I'm not going to ever let anyone abuse me. I'm not going to let what happened to my mother happen to me. I will never have an alcoholic in my life. I will never, never, never. Not realizing that the impact it had on me was so negative that I turned into that person I hated the most. And for me to get that therapy took time. And I'm still in therapy and I'm learning, because you have to open those wounds.
Yeah.
As a child, you kept your mouth shut. Nobody spoke about
Yeah.
those dirty little secrets.
Yeah.
So you learn to shut it down. And I shut down in front of my therapist. I didn't know how to be honest about the abuse, because my mother was abusive too. She was abused and turned around and beat the daylights. I'm talking with coffee cords, that I never knew how it affected me until one day my husband pulled out an electric coffee pot and I literally ran into the room into a fetal position. And
Wow.
that is when I knew that if I didn't get help, that it was going to affect my life later down the road. And it was going to destroy my marriage.
Were you
Triggers.
physically or verbally?
This physically and mentally, where when we would get beaten, we would have to hold the door while our other siblings got beaten.
And what about against your spouse?
I never ever physically hit him. It was
Verbally.
just verbally. And I, believe it or not, it says, you are sick. It's a sickness, because I didn't think that I was abusive with him.
So I'm just gonna interject real quickly, and this is going to be my perspective from my understanding of what you are telling me. You have said that you are an abuser. I'm going to professionally disagree with you, because I think what you're experiencing is you've experienced abusive tendencies, you have done abusive things, but that does not make you an abuser. An abuser wouldn't ever do what you've done.
Oh God, really?
Yeah.
A chronic abuser,
Is more of a narcissist.
yes,
or
thinks what they are doing is rightfully what
some
they
sort
are
of
allowed to
borderline
do.
Personality disorder.
Well,
Well,
we
this
can have
time I
we can
always
have
feel
many
people, and
discussions
always-
about the DSM-5 and domestic violence. I don't even.
But-
That's a whole other
But always,
topic.
but they always feel
Entitled.
righteous, entitled. It's
They
would never say,
their
I
fault,
don't want to
their
be
problem.
this.
We have someone that said that the father is the head of the household and family. Domestic abuse is the spawn of a fatherless family and children born out of wedlock.
That's not
That's
true.
bull
That is
Bull
bull.
and more bull.
I'm the youngest of
absolutely incorrect.
10 of a single mother, and there's never any hint of
An
any
abuser
abuse.
can become from the two-parent household. One of the parents can be the main abuser, could be that
Absolutely.
father who is the head of the household
Absolutely.
and shuts the entire family down. I don't know.
Mm.
That's a personal opinion. That's a personal feeling. That is not a fact. So for those that may feel that way, let's be clear. Majority of the people that are in two-parent households, one of the parents is suffering from abuse.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily a single parent household, because if you're a single parent in a household, you don't actually have that abuser living with you once you realize you're being abused.
Then,
So
you know,
the person that feels that way, I feel for you.
yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
for
Absolutely.
Yeah.
you. You need to seek
Wow.
help too.
Let's
Yeah.
be clear. Domestic violence, intimate partner, single family home. You're talking, you might be describing child abuse.
Entirely
and
possible.
And totally possibly you could be referring to child abuse, you know, a child being hit by the single parent. But when we're talking about domestic violence, it is an intimate partner
Yes.
that is abusing the relationship. So let's be clear and let's stop, you know, this misconception about it coming and spawn from these single family home situations.
Right.
So-
It's so much deeper than that.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I'm really glad that you brought that question up and we addressed it. That's great. But I really want to give such
Yes, absolutely.
strength to your strength and reach out to you that you are such a strong individual and you have seen evil.
Yeah.
But you can to be able to recognize it in yourself and say no
Mm.
and say I don't want to do this and say I want to get help and then do it. That's not an abuser.
No.
That's not an abuser. That's a part. You are having an abnormal reaction, or I'm sorry, a normal reaction to an abnormal trauma.
Mm.
What you are experiencing and what you are experiencing is normal for you and for what you went through. There's nothing wrong with you. What happened to you was wrong. What was done to you was wrong. You are not wrong. You are a human. You are beautiful and you are strong and you are capable. And look how far you have come and the achievements that you have made. And the step to be able to say, I want to get help and then go through with it. It's incredible. That's the hardest step that any human will ever do.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is.
So
Absolutely.
thank you for sharing your story of survival and strength. And I honor you in that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think, we feel that if we're impacted by certain things, because we are impacted by certain things and we may potentially be reactive doing the same thing or the cycle continues. If you identify with it, if you get help, if you try
Change
to
behavior.
change the behavior, you are far long ahead of any abuser who just continues the cycle and repeats it and think it's okay. Still considers that that's the right thing to do.
Right.
That's who I am and accept that and that I'm gonna be who I am because there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing.
Right. And whether that's how they were brought up, whether that's how their own childhood was, where they
Right.
saw their
Right.
parents doing this and that, and for whatever reason, that's all they know.
Mm-hmm.
But breaking that cycle, and that is key, and working with the kids as young as possible to get them to understand what is wrong in the household is not their fault. That it is not their job to fix it.
That's I want to
Well,
talk
I'm
about
glad-
that.
Yes.
I want to talk about
I
that.
have-
Absolutely.
I wanted to just tell Maria, I'm glad that you did get help
Yeah.
because you may not, from the definition that Lauren just gave us, she said that you were reacting to what happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, you still sought help, which was mindful of the other person that was feeling abused by your verbal attacks. Because it was, you guys was having disagreements, but as you said, that you were verbally abusive to him. We don't minimize anyone else's experience. to soften the blow. But you did get help. You realized that you was following a pattern and a
Right.
cycle that you experienced growing.
Right.
And I say all that because I broke cycles in my life. People talk about I'm mean. I walk around with a mean face all the time. I'm real serious all the time because to me, I don't know anything else. I didn't get to be a kid to have the giggles about things that kids giggle about. I was already a serious adult at 10. I say that to say I don't minimize anybody's feelings. So I am so proud that you actually got help. Therapy is important.
Yeah.
We need to let people know that mental health is important.
Yes.
I believe that our grandparents' generation, I speak for me, my grandparents' generation, because I'm not sure of everybody's age here, but my grandparents' generation to me was called the secret generation.
Oh, yeah.
They kept
Absolutely.
secrets.
Mhm.
If somebody did something they shouldn't have been doing,
Mhm.
you were told you don't tell anybody.
Yep.
It's a family
It's a
issue.
It's a
family issue.
family issue.
Inside the
And a lot of
household.
the times it was swept under the rug. And then again, we're walking around with a bunch of wounded people. They're walking wounded. So do you blame the abuser? Once you realize that you're abusing someone, if you don't stop after you've acknowledged it,
Mhm.
then that's just who you
That's
are.
who you are.
Yes.
Yep.
That's just who you
Absolutely.
are.
Wow.
In any sense of the word. So there are people that are out there. They set themselves up. That's their whole goal is to find their victim and keep victimizing. They do the same thing to the same people over and over again. Each relationship that they get in, they find that weakness. They find it right before they get into it totally, and they break them down. Mental breakdown is the first step of an abuser being in your life.
Mhm.
If I break you here,
Mhm. Break
I
your
got you
spirit.
everywhere
Yep.
else.
Absolutely.
It's really easy.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that it's easy and it's something that people should be doing. I'm just saying, but that's their mindset is I gotta break her here. If I break him here or her here,
Everything
I
else.
can
is-
take them out
Yep.
the rest of the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So from a child's perspective, I totally forgot where I was going because I'm like, I mean, honestly, listening to everybody and I'm like, all this energy, all this stuff that's coming, I'm like taking in from everyone. The one thing about children, we've seen situations where children have taken action on the parent.
Yep.
And it's what we don't want happening is that the children have to live their lives knowing that they had to take a parent out because of an abusive situation. It's that you want to talk about mental anguish and what they have to deal with for the rest of their lives. That's something that you have to also consider as well if you're in an abusive relationship is the children that are also in that relationship. They, there are some children that'll say that, oh my God, I can't believe that, I'm going to have to hurt daddy or I'm going to have to hurt mommy because she's hurting daddy or daddy's hurting mommy, things of that nature. The impact it has on children, not just seeing and dealing with the abuse, but you might have a child who now wants to hurt that parent, regardless of the unconditional love. It's like they may have that feeling of their mother that they want to protect them.
Right.
And that's whether it's in a situation where it's a 2-parent household or maybe a boyfriend that's in the picture or a girlfriend that's in the picture. Like they will take action, in some cases, and that has happened.
Well, you've had those that had to choose.
Yeah.
You're either gonna love me or your mother. It's not gonna be both of us.
Yeah,
That's a form of abuse.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yep.
That's a form of abuse.
How do you start getting the red flags out there to society? So that not just the children, but the adults.
The adults, yeah.
The teenagers, the college age that are getting into these relationships. It's new.
Yeah.
It hasn't started
Yeah.
yet. And most important is not just in a what I call a standard domestic relationship, but in the same-sex relationships, that, you know, a lot of these people are coming from an almost loveless family, and now suddenly they're being swamped with love. They're, you know, it's that honeymoon phase, and they're being overwhelmed, and they're not going to recognize a lot of the sense. So how do you, as a resource, how do we as a society start to get those red flags out there so somebody can say, hey, you know what, my gut's telling me this, and I'm reading that this is not a good thing, and, you know, I'm going to get that flag.
Right. Well, two points is, one, the LGBTQ plus community is so vulnerable to domestic abuse and sexual abuse, for many different reasons. One of them being, if let's say you're not out yet, that is a really common tactic that an abuser will use, is threatening to out them to their family, to keep them in that relationship. But what we do with women's resources and in the community is we do trainings. We do things like this. We're actually very involved over at ESU and NCC. We're engaged with their campus life programs, to doing programs, presentations, getting information, flashcards out there, making sure our resources is very visible. High school level, we are working on it. Well, COVID kind of made it much more difficult. We're trying to get back in there. But we did have really great, strong programs in East Stroudsburg High School, where we would work with the teens on healthy relationships and identifying what is a healthy relationship, what isn't a healthy relationship, understanding respect, accepting no from another person, all these different tactics, and the healthy expressions of feelings, toxic masculinity, how media plays into these structures of gender roles and how that can contribute to domestic abuse. So yeah, we do these programs. We have these programs available. Unfortunately, it's more of a time issue that trying to get in sometimes to schools is they're trying to do so much in such a very short period of time. But all of our resources are on our website. We're available to come out and do any kind of training, speaking to groups, to parents groups, to teens, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, anything like that. We will come out for free and do these trainings.
And what is the website?
WRMonroe.org.
It's Chris, you actually brought up a good point, and I started thinking about education, right? Education, because, you know, if you grow up in that environment, you don't know any different, right? Unless you just, you know it's not a good feeling. It's not, you don't like seeing what's going on from a domestic parent situation or relationship situation in your home. But then, if that's what you're used to, and then you get into a situation in high school, you have a boyfriend, right? College, you get involved with someone, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the case may be. That cycle, like you start getting used to just that type of love.
Because you think it's normal.
Because you think it's normal, and this is love, right? They care about me. That's why they're telling me X, Y, Z, and I'm the problem, not them. I'm the problem, right? And that's that manipulation.
And it's often reinforced by and I'm never going to be that person that blames the video games or blames the media, but it doesn't help sometimes either.
Yeah.
When we have things like Twilight, things like 50 Shades of Grey, and young girls are watching these things and says, that's the kind of relationship I want, and I want to just scream, no, that's abusive.
Father, trying to explain to my kids that Pornhub is not love. It's not.
It's fake.
It's not only is it fake. It's just an absolute overwhelming. It underscores everything that is what we stand for as a family. But it's easy access.
Yeah,
and that's what kids see, and that's what they presume. That sex is love, so that's what I must do to be loved.
Yeah.
Having in sex ed, let's just go down that rabbit hole for a second. It can be very lacking, especially for females. It revolves almost 100% around reproduction versus actually healthy sexuality should be the focus instead versus reproduction. Put it out there, like kids want to know. Teens want to know. They want to know what all these different terms mean. What does it feel like? What does it look like? What should I have? What should I do? All these different things, but they're not being taught. So they go to porno to learn, and they're being shown these videos of very fake, very sometimes violent.
Yeah.
Videos of a sexual exchange.
Yeah.
And that reinforces those very rigid gender roles where a woman is generally the submissive party.
Yep.
And
Yep.
the male is the dominant party.
Yeah, Terry always says, Terry Pickering, right there, Genesis Radio. He always says pop culture.
Pop culture.
But you know what?
It's pop culture.
We can't. We are growing in a different time.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
Yes.
We are living in a microwave minute.
Mm.
But every generation has.
Yeah.
Every generation.
Not in the
has.
same manner as we did. We had public phones. Where would you find one now? We had
Well,
Things
no
have
access
changed.
to
Just
internet.
because things are different
We had
doesn't
no-
mean anything's different. I mean, my mother was a single kid running around the city, New York City, in the 1930s. And, she would go to makeout parties at Coney Island.
They had makeout parties. Now they have it all kinds of.
But, but in other words, it's
I'm
just,
not-
it's a
I'm not
matter of
justifying-
perspective.
I'm
It's just a
I'm
matter
not
of
justifying
perspective.
generational things. What I'm saying is these children that are growing now are living a different life than we did.
So
Point
it
blank and
must be
period.
so much easier for us then to be able to get those red flags out there for the kids to see. Because as
Well,
you just
is,
pointed out,
are they gonna listen?
well,
I mean, the reality is a lot of parents compensate in other ways. They take away from the reality of the real and put fake reality in front of them. A lot of these kids don't know that those are scripted shows. Those reality shows are scripted.
That's right.
Those people
Oh,
are being
absolutely.
paid. When the real world first came out, they weren't scripted. That's why they were so bad.
That's right.
Because life is
When
boring.
they
Exactly.
started becoming that these real housewives that are walking in 5-inch heels, where are they kids? And majority of them are not married. You have the reality, the kids have access to iPhones,
Well,
iPads,
technology has changed.
iPods.
Yeah.
They get us stuff so much quicker
Oh yeah.
than we could have ever imagined.
That's
We used
right.
to go play outside. You want to know why America is obese?
Mm.
How many parents are sending their kids out? Saturday mornings, you cleaned your house like your mom had you.
Mhm.
You sat before they actually, because the cartoon started at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning.
That's right.
You cleaned up, you went out and you played all
All
day
Mhm.
until the street light came on. These kids could go outside for what?
I'm sitting in my
And the
room.
manner in which they're talking, they're calling your friends by their first names like they're their friends. There's no miss, no mister.
That's
It's
right.
the way we're raising these kids. We have to take some responsibility, some way, shape, or form. We could protest the same way we protest and everything else. Stop watching 50 Shades of Grey. You can, if you want to watch that, there was a point where after a certain hour, certain things was on TV. After 10
Absolutely.
p.m., because your babies were supposed to be in bed.
Mhm.
Now, the channels, I remember when the channels used to shut off and you would have the snow.
Mhm.
You don't
No,
have
Well,
that
then you
now.
can just go on YouTube.
Right. So,
So
you
I
have
think to your point,
technology
yeah,
is
technology.
different. So can
Right.
we
They're
tell
inundated.
them? Sure. We want you to know that an abuser, one of the first things that an abuser does is isolate you. They take you away from your friends and your family. They make it seem like they are the only ones that love you,
Mhm.
that they're the only ones that care about you. That's the first thought of getting you alone.
And they lie.
They got it down to the point where you question your mom calling, how you doing today? She really loved me.
Mhm. Or why is she calling?
There's that gaslighting.
Mhm.
It's a lot out there.
Well, then you have the abusers that show the front in front of family and friends and
absolutely.
so on, that they're just this great human being, right? And that
Mhm.
they take care of you. Again, it goes back to that whole thing, like this facade
Yes.
that they put out there. And then home, it's a totally different
Different story.
situation, totally
I'm saying-
different story.
Right.
So I
We
agree,
have to-
there's so
we
many
have to
different,
we have to be conscious of the environment that we're raising our children in,
yeah,
around the people.
Well,
Yeah.
My point was, let's utilize that environment. In other words, how can we get those red flags out there? How can we get the social information out there to change so
Right.
people can hear it and see it and understand it? And we have access to those YouTubes. We have access to those influencers. We have access to Instagram, to Facebook.
yeah.
So why aren't you know, why isn't there more information being poured out there?
So
You
I
know,
think it is.
It's
Yeah.
just.
I think it is,
Yeah.
and I've been in this world and field for 17 years, and even in that time frame, I have seen a shift in how much people are talking about this, and it is definitely a shift in our younger generation. And I don't mean like
Absolutely.
14-year-olds, but like
Yeah.
the young 20-year-olds,
Yeah.
21-year-olds. These young people, these young influencers that are finally coming out and not taking it anymore. Like, this isn't appropriate. This is not okay. For instance, Simone Biles on mental health.
Yeah.
She is
Yes.
an influencer. She has changed the game on mental health. And I think when people hear these stories and they hear about domestic abuse and sexual abuse and child abuse, and you hear these famous people talk about it, whether it's on TikTok or whatever, the new thing is, to people react to it. People are, whether they want to or not, maybe they're like, whatever, it's not me. But it's in there now. It's in an airway now. It's an airway. And when they see people and when people see people acting badly on TikTok, or people are getting called out more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Versus,
absolutely.
I mean, I've seen so many more protests on campus for people who have raped people
Yeah.
than I've ever seen.
Exactly.
And it's
From the
not just
60s.
women. It is women and men
Oh, yeah.
coming up to these protests, calling these predators
Calling
out
them out.
Mhm.
more than I've ever seen.
I do, you know, you just said that, and it was interesting because this is why technology is crazy. So domestic violence, we were promoting it and everything because we knew we were going to have this discussion. All of a sudden, on every social media platform, I go on Facebook, I'm seeing stuff about domestic violence. I go on TikTok, I'm seeing things on domestic violence, and I'm seeing people actually videoing their abusive relationship to get also people to see what's going on. So to your point, somebody can get them help.
Right.
And say, you need help. Like, this is, you know, like they're watching it.
This
I just
isn't
saw a
right.
video yesterday of a woman who she's fixing her hair, and her abuser, I'll say, he comes in the door and he's, you know, verbally abusing her on TikTok. And he didn't realize that she was taping, that she was on TikTok taping. All of a sudden, he turned around and he looked and he walked out the room. She said he did that because he saw that I was taping him. But at that point, it was already too late.
But now, real quick, what about females or males that are being abused and don't have phones? Don't have the
Yeah.
ability
Right.
to call
That's what
and
we
to
were
seek
talking
the
about.
help,
Yeah.
because unfortunately, that is another control method.
Yeah.
That's
Is
not
that,
realistic.
no, you're not gonna call, you're not gonna talk, you're not gonna have the ability to even search online for what you need. What happens
Good
to
question.
those people?
Right. So, of course, it's figuring out that first step to get to places like us.
Yeah.
So whether it's a neighbor or a colleague, or, oh, I just need to run next door and grab some eggs, or I'm going to go to the food pantry. We have a satellite office up in Tobyhanna at the Mountain Center that also houses a food pantry. We are also out in the West End. We have a satellite office out at PVEN, which is a food pantry. People who say, I'm going to go to the food pantry, pick up our order, then you can also go and seek assistance wherever you're at. But we also got a grant to get phones, straight talk phones. So it's minutes, it's a certain amount of minutes, and we can give them to the victims. I mean, you have to figure out how to hide them and stuff like that, but
Absolutely.
it's a phone to utilize up to a certain amount of minutes, then you would have to re-up them. But we do have those on hand to give out for victims who need a phone.
That's actually that's a very real thing,
Yeah,
right?
yes,
And
it
I
is.
have to say, there's a lot of women and men who don't feel comfortable telling anybody because they're afraid that they're going to be found out, like the phone call. You know, I saw something this morning about if you go on the computer and go to a specific website, like a website for domestic violence, I just happened to see that it said, please make sure you clear
Your history.
your history and your cache
Mhm.
so that they don't know that you actually went looking for
That help.
that help.
Yep.
Phone calls, delete delete any type of phone numbers that you call to get help.
Mhm.
If you're going into a supermarket, maybe leaving a note with a manager or a cashier.
Yep.
Or, so I want to focus on how are ways that people can communicate that they're in a situation that they need help.
And for
Mhm.
others to get more involved, because
Right.
so many people don't want to get involved. They
Yeah.
don't want to
I see
deal
on,
with it.
Like the thing that happened in Philadelphia earlier this week, where there was a woman who was being raped
and they
on
was
the L,
taping,
and
yes.
people were videoing it.
That's disgusting.
I was infuriated about
Yes,
this,
Well,
and I
I-
hope they're brought up on charges.
I do
Yeah.
too.
I saw, I actually saw it on the news. There are some situations where, young ladies were with their abuser
Mm,
and they left a note in the bathroom.
yeah.
They left a note on the receipt.
Mm-hmm.
They let somebody know how they felt unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
I saw where the young lady ordered pizza.
Mm-hmm.
The abusers have been asking them to order pizza. And 911 is being identifying
Yes.
that these persons are unsafe.
Yes.
They got code words. I'm not
Yes.
sure of what they are. Let me be honest with
Yeah.
I don't know.
you. I am not 100% sure of what they are. But the 911 operator, the young lady ordered a pizza. And when she ordered the pizza, they asked, "Are you safe?" I believe the operator asked the person that was
Yeah.
calling,
I heard
"Are
that
you
one.
safe?
Mm-hmm.
How many people are you trying to feed?"
Yeah.
And that gave them
An idea.
answers
Right.
to how many people were in the house.
Mhm.
And then the operator was able to continue the conversation
Mm-hmm.
why the young lady was still safe and just basically ordering pizza.
Mm-hmm.
I think the code word for that particular situation where she was pepperoni, and
I think
they
I
knew
heard the
something
same
was
one.
wrong,
Yeah.
and they kept her on the phone long enough to trace where she was at. No,
Mm-hmm.
they asked her where she was delivering it. They gave her the information, and then I think you hear the boyfriend in the background talking about, "Hurry up and get off the phone.
Mhm.
Why is it taking you so long to order that?" And
And
then
they got a bar menu with you
Yes.
order certain drinks.
Right.
Yes.
right,
Yes.
so
Yeah,
there's
they do that too.
there
Angel shot.
are ways out there
Yeah. To communicate.
that are able
Angel
to
shots.
communicate. Now, can I tell you it all? Absolutely not. Do I know how to handle every situation? I do not.
Mm.
I say to you that if you have friends or family that you feel are in a situation that is unsafe for them, in any way, shape, or form, you find those resources and you give it to them. You help them get that knowledge, because if you know that you have a sister that does not have a phone in her house,
Mm-hmm.
or she's not able to use the telephone,
Mm-hmm.
go by and visit her. Pop up on them if you have the ability to know where they are, because sometimes they put them in places where you just don't know.
Mhm.
Any information that can help. Women's Resources is an awesome place. There's other places where that are also helping in other situations. But know that there is help,
There is resources out there.
and there's resources for help. A lot of times you don't even realize that you're dealing with somebody that had to deal with something else, that they may have become an abuser based on what they've experienced. So we don't want to call it a reaction. We're just going to say that they continue to cycle. So instead of breaking the cycle, they are now abusers.
Mm-hmm.
So I say all that to say, again, my opinions and my thoughts are mine and mine only. But you can, it's just so broad. It's so
It is.
much.
It is. I just think, and I want to just caution for one moment, because I remember you saying, you stated about, show up to, if you got a sister and a situation she's in, whatever. Be careful as well, because those abusers
Don't have a problem with using you.
don't have a problem. Well, not
They
even
have
that,
to
but
do
they're
it
also
safely.
might take it out on
Yes.
the one that they're
Yeah.
abusing. So just be very conscious of the abuser and how they react to situations. Because let me tell you something, they know somebody's trying
Absolutely.
to help
Right.
the person they're abusing. They know. And they will take, and just make sure it's not I just all of a sudden out of nowhere just started popping up and this and that. you have to make sure it's almost like a common thing that you're doing, like
That
it's not
safe.
that, yeah, exactly, so that
Yeah.
they don't get an idea that something is going on.
Mhm.
Because believe me, they're thinking as well. Because again, they're trying to manipulate the situation, manipulate the person they're abusing. So I agree. Make it and that's why, you know, we have to be, as family, regardless of what you're going through with your family, your siblings, your parents, whatever have you, you never know what they're going through. And if you're not staying in contact and close with them, these situations are going to be harder and harder to manage through if they're trying to get help. Because if you don't make it, you know, I'm calling, you know, I call my sister every week and talk to her. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're calling. That abuser is going to already know something's up. Why are you calling all of a sudden? You don't call here. Now all of a sudden you're calling your sister, like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know,
Yeah.
you're calling your brother, like, what's going on? So just be very careful. That's why I say it's important, like, regardless of what's going on in your family situation, stay close to your family. Yes, stay close to your siblings, stay close to your parents, grandparents, children, nieces, nephews, whoever you can get to. Because when it's just normal, there's never that thought that they're just reaching out just because there's something going on.
Well, you want to
Because
close
it's
the
going-
loop.
You want to close the loop, and you want it to be a just a normal environment, right?
Yeah.
A normal relationship.
Absolutely.
Because that can be detrimental
Mhm.
if it's just like a one-off situation.
Absolutely.
But I think to your point, Lady Wisdom, and you know, Terry, you mentioned it as well. There are ways to communicate the abuse you're going through, or that you're unsafe in an unsafe environment. And to your point, without having a phone in the home or whatever have you, again, you're going out to dinner. On the receipt, maybe you're signing something, or you're going to the bathroom on a napkin, whatever the case may be. Any which way, even if that person doesn't call, do it every single time. Someone is
Someone
going
is
to
bound to.
help. Someone is going to help. And anybody out there, if you see things, if you go into a bathroom and see a napkin written, or there's a number written and somebody's saying I'm unsafe, call and help someone.
Well,
You know,
let's
don't-
also be conscious that even if you have a phone, it doesn't mean you're safe.
Oh, no,
That's
no,
right.
Because you
absolutely.
can actually have a phone and the other person just happens to have control.
Oh,
They
absolutely.
know every text that's coming in,
Yeah.
every
Yes.
call that is
Tracker apps?
going
Yes.
out.
They mirror.
Trackers.
They mirror the phone.
Yeah,
Yes.
they do.
They
They
mirror.
mirror phones.
I know someone that was in a situation where I would always text the phone. I'm a bitch. Real talk. So I don't play any games with anyone. I'm not friendly in that manner. And the person know that I carry. And I used to put notes in there on purpose. Should I call the police now? Do I need to come over there? If I come, I'm not coming alone. I would drop them in where they stand. That person would always be able to get me, pull me back, to calm me down. Don't lie to me. You know, if I'm on speaker, I'ma know.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to get away from the abuser.
Be careful, Lady Wisdom is not playing.
That's true
No,
though.
but they were able to get away from the
Oh,
abuser.
no, good,
And he
good.
was never sure
Good.
where I was gonna show up.
Yeah.
So because he was never sure where I was gonna show up, or who was gonna come, or if I was
Or
gonna
how you were
call,
gonna come.
or how it was gonna be, you have to, sometimes it deters them.
Yeah.
They may not see you as that victim anymore, or a lone victim.
Mm.
Because there's a difference with being a lone victim and having people that are concerned about you.
Mhm.
And they just happen to just not be able to get you to that place of making somebody believe that you weren't cared about.
You want to be that safe space.
Yeah.
That person that you know you can call at 2 a.m. and say, I need help.
Mhm.
That's the person that I think everybody needs to strive to be.
Yeah.
And maybe we're not going to be able to, I'll be this white knight rushing in. but
Wait, packing.
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 But I think there's definitely ways that we can be allies
Yeah.
to survivors, to people who are in situations, whether it is helping them access a phone, helping them to open a secret bank account and having the statements come to them, helping them to keep a go bag at their house.
Yeah.
Having a code word, or if their neighbors, a code for flashing lights to call the police.
Yeah.
Being that person, you might not be able to, or it might not be safe for you to be that person to step in, but you can be that person that enables help to come.
Help to come. Yeah, absolutely.
Most every restaurant and bar should have a sign in their restroom to let you know, because domestic violence is so prevalent
Oh, yeah.
in the world right now.
Absolutely.
But if you go to GenesisRadio.com, there's a post that lets you know at any bar and grill you should be able to see
Oh, on
how
Facebook,
you
yeah.
want a date
Yep.
that isn't
I
going
saw
well.
that, yeah.
It doesn't have to be a brand new date. It could be the date with the person that is abusing you. And it gives you resources to tell you how to get help and seek the help while you're there at the restaurant.
Yeah.
Or the
Drink
bar.
names or something. I
Really,
think.
Angel shot.
Angel shot.
Yes.
I remember
Yeah.
that.
It reads, are you on a date that isn't going well? Is your date not who they said that they were in their profile? Do you feel unsafe or even a bit weird? Is someone bothering you or making you feel uncomfortable? We're here to help. Just go to the bar and ask your server for an angel shot.
Yeah.
Neat is someone will escort you to your car. Dressed, someone will call you an Uber or Lyft. With Lime, they will call the local police.
Yeah, I've heard of these ones.
Now,
Yeah.
what
And
about,
they'll handle that discreetly so that they want the person to be safe.
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
You want to be a bystander, or an upstander is the new term. Bystander means you're just kind of standing by. An upstander, but you want to do it safely.
Right.
Like we're like I said, we're not all packing. So don't think we are.
I'm mad at it.
no, I'm not,
Nobody want to be a
girl.
witness.
So, but there's ways to intervene to be an upstander that don't put your own self in safety.
We have a call.
Okay.
We have a call coming in.
All right, I'll get that. Go.
Hello, this is Sistahship. Who's on?
Go ahead, get in.
Hello.
Okay, hey everyone, great dialogue.
Mama
I
C.
mean, it was great. And you know what, I wanted to say that, sometimes our children are abused or are in the process of being abused or being set up to be abused. In school even. I recount a time when my granddaughter Tiara had a young guy in school stalking her. Everywhere she went, there he was. The next class she had to go to, there he was, or he was behind her, following her. So, believe me, unless we become our children's advocates and stop the nonsense, and then even make it comfortable for our children to come to us and tell us what's going on. Because I rose up in that school, and believe me, when I was finished, it was eliminated. The assistant principal started walking with her to her classes. I called the young man in and told him if it didn't stop, he'd be expelled from the school. So we've got to stand up for our children and even create an atmosphere where our children feel comfortable talking to us.
Yes.
Otherwise, this kind of behavior goes on, and our children don't realize that that's unhealthy behavior.
Absolutely.
We have to have a line of communication that enables our
Yes.
children to tell us what's going on right now in their lives that's making them feel uncomfortable, and then we have to step to whatever the situation is and resolve it so that this kind of behavior doesn't become the norm for our children.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Yes,
Absolutely.
Mama C. She brought up actually something we didn't discuss, which was stalking.
Yeah.
Mama C, perfect one. We didn't
And
even touch stalking.
That's so key. What you brought up is the communication piece with the children.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mama C.
I can't remember if I said this the last time we were on about parent. It's a verb. What is
Yes,
it?
yes. Parent
It's
is
a
a verb.
It's not a noun. It's a
Mhm.
verb. You have to be engaged and constantly with your children. whether they are engaging with you or not, as long as you are constantly saying, no matter what, I will always love you, I will always be here for you. There's nothing you can say or do that will make either of those untrue. You will constantly have those conversations, especially when they're teenagers, be like, shut down. That's normal. They're teenagers, but it's in their head. They know that if something more bad were to happen, they know that they can come to you. You want those lines of communication open 100% because of those kinds of situations where someone was stalking her. It could have been terrible. It could have gotten a lot worse.
Yeah.
And
It could have been ended fatally.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, stalking is another component. So just be
Of
clear out
abuse.
there of abuse.
Absolutely.
Again, it's someone who wants to control and, they want to be everywhere you are and see what's going on. And, we have a lot of women who stalk men. Let's just be
Yes.
honest. Let's throw it out there. Stalking is a
Both
form.
ways.
It's not natural. Okay. It's not a healthy relationship.
What's that other one? You? It's not a.
Oh,
is that a-
you. Yes.
you?
The show you.
Oh my God.
Again, not a relationship
Not a
to aspire to.
Right.
No,
Please.
Not a
absolutely
relationship.
not. That's
So-
what
I
I
got a
was.
lot of Netflix to catch up on.
Oh, there's plenty.
Yes.
But Maid, I have to say, from what I've seen of it so far and what
It's
I've
good.
heard, it is a fantastic,
It really is.
fantastic depiction of for lack of a better
Emotional.
term, it's emotional and it's so real.
Yeah. It
It's
is.
not glammed up.
No.
It is very visceral. It's very emotional, and the reactions that we're hearing from it. And I'm hoping Netflix timed this correctly, put it out in October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Every single day, I hear more and more people talking about it. So if you haven't watched me, go watch it. Discuss it with your family. Discuss it with your friends.
Yep.
Talk about it with your colleagues. Again, the more that we talk about this, the more we
The
bring it
more-
to light, the less we're going to have it hide in the shadows.
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What I had wanted to bring up that when the woman had called is what resources are out there for the younger generation, for the kids. Who can they turn to? Can they call you?
Yes.
Can they show up at a doorstep? What is available for them? Because I know for myself growing up, we didn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't available to us.
Right.
And you didn't know because there were times, and it hit a chord when Steph had mentioned how sometimes the kid wants to hurt.
Mhm.
And I've actually been that kid
Mm-hmm.
who put my hands on my father
Mhm.
and didn't have anyone to go to,
Yeah.
Mhm.
didn't have any resources to sit and chat with someone and explain why I did what I did, because for so long I had felt so guilty about
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
I did save my mom.
Yeah.
So you're so conflicted
Mhm.
that you don't know where to go to, who to turn
Mm-hmm.
to. And you know what, in the Puerto Rican family, you didn't go to your family.
Yeah.
You did not disclose what was happening behind your door.
Right.
Mhm.
You just didn't.
When I was raising my children, what I do with my children is I have a real good rapport with a lot of their friends.
Mhm.
My kids would send their friends to me. I realized that the kids had no voice or person to hear them. So there's a difference when somebody's listening to you, like you say, you tap your mommy and your mommy's listening to you, but she got 15 other things going on in her head that she got to get dinner together, the laundry, she got to pick up your brother and your sister. So what I became was an advocate to hear the voice of those that are silent. The silent listen.
audience.
I
You were the
always
safe
talk about
Yep.
that. I had got into it. If you found me, you always found me around the kids.
Mhm.
The young kids, I would get on the floor and play with them. The older kids, the teenagers, I would get into a game. We would play games.
Mhm.
We have conversation. I recall going to a function. I was in the basement with all of the teenagers. We were laughing and we joking. We have a conversation. And when I finished with them, they wanted their time. I went upstairs and I went into the kitchen and I was talking to the adult. And one mother really got on me. She is not your friend. You are my friend. Whatever my daughter tells you, you are to tell me. I said, absolutely not. I will not betray her confidence.
Mhm.
If she is detrimental to herself
Yeah.
or others, you will know about it. But other than that,
Yeah.
she needs somebody to talk to. I'm there to listen to her.
Mhm.
You as parents, I speak to the parents that are out there that don't realize that sometimes children will not be able to come to you. They fear your response or your reaction. They don't know if you're going to take someone else's side or if you really have their back. So they will go to another adult. Don't be that parent that feels like your kid has to come to you. Let them go to somebody that you find is safe. If you trust that person and they trust that
Right.
person, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Because the young adults nowadays need somebody that they can speak to. They will not speak to anyone. I had a 40-year-old young lady run up to me and she screamed, "That's Miss Sherry." And then when she explained to me, to the group of people she was with, who I was, she explained she felt the safest talking to me. That
Wow,
made a
that's
major
deep.
difference.
They need a
So
safe
I say
place.
to you parents, please, you want to know where kids could go, let them find a safe haven,
Yeah.
but don't let them fall into the hands of a predator.
Right.
Yeah.
And in answer to your question is, in the state of Pennsylvania, children who are over the age of 14 can consent for their own mental health services.
Mhm.
That includes us. So if you're over the age of 14, you can come, as long as we can figure out how to get you here or meet you wherever we're at, you're able to consent for your own services. That's not up to your parent. Below that age, then it gets a little more complicated, but we can try to kind of figure it out with the school district or something like that. We actually do provide counseling services through our own agency in the schools. We have a couple of MOUs through the different schools that we will go in and provide counseling services for the kids who've been identified who would like us to talk to them about what's going on either at home or what they're experiencing in a dating relationship or things like that.
That's wonderful. That's really good to
And
know.
our 24-hour hotline, it's for anybody. And you could, like I said, you can remain anonymous. The key is, like yourself, we are mandated reporters. So if a child is calling or if someone's calling regarding something that a child's in danger or a child has been or will be or is being abused, we are mandated to report that, just to be aware. But you can call and talk to a counselor and remain completely anonymous. If we don't have anything to report, we can't make any report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing dialogue today. I mean, I think that this is definitely a situation, domestic violence. It can lead to a lot of different other type of abuses, some abuses that are part of domestic violence. So we have to just be cognizant of the signs. We have to be aware and educated on how we can get help, where we can go for help, who is a safe place for you. If you are or were an abuser, identify that you are and get help, or you're going to continue the pattern, right?
And don't be afraid. Do not be afraid to get that help, because if you miss that window, you will continue the cycle.
Yeah.
And I am speaking from experience. I knew at that very moment that that was my window, and I had to climb out. And it's important to be aware of your actions towards other people.
Now, Maria, thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to go around the room here because, again, a great conversation. There's so much more in this space, I think we need to keep educating people, right? I think that's the key.
Yeah.
Is that it's not a one-time conversation. It's a conversation to have all the time. And to have people that are to be aware of services that are available and how they can reach out for help. Maria, thank you so much for all
You're
your
so
insight.
welcome.
And again, you are a survivor.
Yes. Thank you.
And, so, I mean, it's just an honor to have you on the show and speak about your experience and the fact that you have crawled out of that and you identified that as an opportunity. And, thank you so much for joining.
You're welcome.
Chris, any final words from you?
Just that no matter who you are, what your sexuality, what your who you are as a person, male, that the stigma doesn't have to exist.
That's right.
If you you know what, if your gut's telling you something, then reach out to someone,
Right.
And just explore that gut feeling, because you know what, it's probably right.
Well said.
Your
Well
gut
said.
is
You
always
gotta
right.
trust your gut.
Gotta trust.
Always.
Absolutely. Well said.
Don't
Thank you
for
for that.
kids, but like my mother and my grandmother always thought that uh-oh feeling. When I would talk to kids, I tune you get that uh-oh feeling that something's just not right. You gotta listen to the uh-oh feeling, and that's how we train the little ones.
That's when you mentioned that on the last show. I thought that was awesome. It's like that. Something's
Yeah,
not
That's
right.
really good.
Because you talk about their gut feeling, they're like, "What's my gut feeling?" It's like you get like uh-oh feelings, and they can identify with that.
Yeah, I think we could all identify with
Yeah.
that, even as adults. Lauren,
Yes.
final words, and please give out your information again.
Absolutely. Women's Resources, don't let our name mislead you. We are here for anyone who has been a survivor or is a victim of domestic or sexual violence or a family member of a victim. Whether it is happening, has just happened, or happened 50 years ago and it's still affecting you today, reach out. You don't have to go through this alone. 570-421-4200. Or wrmonroe.org to get some more information. Follow us on Facebook as well. I think the key takeaway here is this is a bigger problem than all of us, but it's not going to be solved if we don't start the process.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming.
And thank you both and all of you for sharing your stories of strength and survival. I'm honored to be witness to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lady wisdom.
I don't even know what to say. It's just know that you're not alone. There are ways that you can find help and seek help if you're not sure. Maybe you got a friend. You might have that one friend that you may be able to ask for help. This is a tough topic, touchy. I hope that we helped one, maybe two people out there more, but if we reach one person, it's important.
Yes.
Worth it.
Domestic violence is huge. It doesn't just cover physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, financial, are all a part of it. Again, reach out to women's, or I will call it family resources, because they do cover a multitude.
There's a name option.
If family resources is not for you, reach out to someone that you could trust. Maybe it's at your church, maybe it's a family member's house, a friend, or when you go to your local restaurant.
Yeah. Bar, restaurant, whatever.
Don't be ashamed to ask for help. Your pride will make you hungry and or homeless. Your goal is not to don't let your fear fight you from getting help. I don't have anything else to say, but thank you all for coming out.
Yes.
You are
Thank you.
not what happened to you.
Yeah. That's. Please do not wait till it's too late. There's too many people that have lost their lives to domestic violence. Don't wait till it's too late. It's, the cycle still continues. Even if it's, that person didn't make it, there's someone else right behind them that's going to continue that cycle. So please do not wait till it's too late. Whatever it takes for you to get out of that situation, whatever resources you need, the Sistahship. Obviously, if you're leaving messages, if we are the outlet for you or the resource for you, and a message on Facebook or on our shows, if you're commenting, and leave a comment.
I just
Let
want
us
to
know.
add this for those parents that may find and seek help. Please find and seek help for your children as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want them carrying it on for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely. Thank
You
you
need
for
to
that.
get them help.
With that said, I know this was a deep, heavy topic for a lot of people, and I hope it also enlightened people on what domestic violence truly represents, and what resources are available and how you can get after communicating that you're in a situation like that. So with that said, again, I want to thank the panel here. Amazing discussion. I want to thank Gynesis Radio. This is your Sistahship. Tiffany Cole-Bling, Terry Pickering, Lady Wisdom, Lauren, thank you so much. Chris, Maria, we couldn't have done it today without all of you.
Right.
And for all those that are listening out there, know that we are here and we are available, and we obviously have resources available, women's resource. With that said, this is your girl, Steph Byer. We are here. We are the Sistahship Network. We got a brothership representation here. Without any further ado, we'll see you again next week. Thank you so much for joining us. See you again soon. Peace and love. This is the Sistahship. There, you cut us off real quick.
Are we done?
Didn't mean to do that.
I was gonna say, cut us right out. Oh,
That was rough.
that was pretty deep.
That was
That like
Can you tell it was
cut, that like
rough?
cut some wounds
I think we
open
need to
on
do
me.
some self-care.